Hi everyone, this is Roshan Lifestyle Mastery, and I'm excited to have Enzo Ottens, who's the CEO of Earnr. Earnr automates tax for side incomes and self-employed. Earnr helps the customers spend less time on day-to-day admin and more time on tasks that spark joy and generate revenue. Enzo done his MBA from London Business School. A big thanks to Rob Domini for the introduction. Welcome to the show, Enzo.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, you have an interesting journey. You work with Metal, Bo, Loot, and now you're building Earnr. What got you into this world of startups?
So I used to be a consultant in a previous life, where I helped basically big retail banks with new regulations. I enjoyed that, but was missing a little bit of like seeing the impact that my work can have on organizations. And started working with startups like on the side, just small financial models, kind of giving a little bit of external advice, and really enjoyed that. Thought this is what I want to do full time, and that was one of the reasons why I did my MBA. Use that as a transition to then go into the startup world. And during my MBA, I started working at Loot part time. Really enjoyed it, and joined there after graduating.
Oh, interesting. And you work with Metal and Bo. What was the experience all about? Did it really help you to get your feet into fintech? And what were some of your learnings there?
Yeah, so I think my journey has been an interesting one. So I think Loot was more a full kind of normal startup journey. And then Bo and Metal, because they were challenger banks that are owned by RBS, was maybe slightly different because it was like part startup, part corporate venture. And you experience kind of this weird in between, which is some parts of it are kind of working for big corporates, some parts of it are very much startup like, but yeah, it's kind of finding yourself in between. So it's a great opportunity before diving into starting my own business, because I was able to get access to some amazing kind of senior leaders in financial services. I think an example like the CEO of Metal, Marique Flamand, she's now the CEO of Earnr Protocol based in Switzerland. And being able to work with those really senior people is quite amazing. And I think you don't get that as often when you work at a small startup, because you just don't have the funds to attract those kind of people. And obviously the good thing about also working at the likes of Bo Metal is that you can see what happens when a startup has a little bit more money than what they would have if you're kind of starting bootstrap or slowly going through the different stages of the funding rounds.
Got it, interesting. And what made you start Earnr? What was the problem point that you saw, especially for self-employed and side income people?
Yeah, so alongside kind of working in fintech, I've also had many other income streams. So I used to be a Deliveroo rider for a little bit, delivering food. I rented out my car on Turo. I've bought and sold sneakers on StockX. So my financial life was maybe slightly more complicated than the common person on the streets, and kind of thought it was quite weird how much work it took me to stay on top of my tax and kind of financial requirements. I saw that there were a lot of banks out there that were helping with at least like giving yourself a new bank account to help organize your transactions, but saw that often wasn't the right solution for people like myself, because we often already have a bank account.
Right.
The problem is just that everything kind of sometimes bundles together, and it's very difficult to get a good overview of really where all the money's coming from and what you should be reporting on your tax return.
Interesting. And you mentioned that you've had a lot of side income streams. Interestingly, you went to B school and you worked as a management consultant. Do you think going forward, people would have a lot of side incomes, and they would not have obviously you're already saying a lot of people are not working in a company for 10 years, but do you think people will have multiple sources of income and multiple side jobs? And And is it something which is legally okay for the company that you're working for? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I guess your example of the business school, right? There is the elusive portfolio career
Right.
that you don't just have your day job. You're maybe a non-executive director somewhere. You do some consulting works. I mean, even lots of business school professors are consultants on the side.
Right.
So we learn it from them. So I think that's maybe like a more later on in your career, what you can be thinking of. But if you then look at the other end of the spectrum of, let's say, more Gen Z, and I think the later millennials, is they want a lot more freedom when they look at what their career should look like. It's not working for the same company, exactly like you said, for 10 years. You started at seeing that with millennials, but you see that even more with Gen Z. They're a lot more active on platforms like Depop, selling their stuff online. You see loads of projects, obviously, in the crypto space, like
Mhm.
NFTs. Those are often pushed by those kind of people that are looking for different kind of career. So we see that that's going to become more and more popular. That people aren't going to just have one income stream. It's going to be a mix. And remote work, which is again generally more acceptable now after the pandemic, is only accelerating that. It's
Mhm.
getting easier and easier to do that. So some of our early customers were people that started an Etsy store because now they didn't have to spend 2 hours or 3 hours a day commuting.
Mhm.
So they have that extra time to follow their passion, which is something really cool. But you also have the growing sharing economy. So people that are renting out different things on Fat Llama or Stashbee. There's people that are kind of gig workers on the side. If you look at gig workers by itself, over 55% of them are dual employed, so they're self-employed as well as employed. So this is just a trend that is going to continue growing.
Very interesting. And before Enzo, which helps people, file their tax. How were self-employed people filing their taxes, especially when it comes to I've seen a lot of taxi drivers, using themselves as side employed. What was the process earlier, or still what do people follow?
Yeah, so a lot of people still use accountants. I
Okay.
think around 2/3 of all people that are self-employed use an accountant.
Okay.
That is quite expensive.
Right.
So an accountant in the UK, if you're self-employed, can cost anywhere between 500 and £1,000 for something that is, I would say, not the most complicated thing if you are well trained and understand all the tax rules. But obviously, a lot of self-employed individuals don't have time and are happy to kind of outsource that. The problem that we saw as well is that there's a lot of changes happening in the tax space. So starting from 2024, people that are self-employed need to do a quarterly tax return rather than yearly tax return. So that is almost like 4 times as much work. If you're still using an accountant, is that really sustainable? And something you also need to consider is that there's still a very large contingent of people that earn this extra income that don't report it. So around 50% of people that need to do a tax return in the UK don't do so. That is becoming more difficult as well. So companies like Uber and Airbnb are already reporting all the people that are using their platform to HMRC.
Oh, okay.
Very, very soon, you're going to see some of those people get fines if they don't do a self-assessment tax return on their own accord.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting. And when it comes to the pricing strategy, what's the price for people who want to automate their taxes through Earnr?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's something we're still trying to figure out what the best way to do in terms of pricing. Like a tax return product is really cyclical. Until we start doing quarterly tax returns, it's once a year. So people often kind of think about it right before the tax return deadline. So
Yeah.
in the UK, that's the 31st January.
Yeah.
Over 50% of people do it in January, unsurprisingly. Um, so it's like a very big need during a very short amount of time. And after that, they don't really think about it.
Mm.
So we've been, thinking about, is like a subscription the right thing to do? So you have products like QuickBooks that is more of a subscription product where you
Right.
charge it every month that people use alongside their accountant. You have kind of new tools like Tax Scouts, where you just get charged for doing a self-assessment or booking some time in with an accountant, and that's it. The way that we did it is we're kind of trying out both.
Okay.
So we're introducing a subscription model and really understanding what people want to get from that. So throughout the year, what we've really found is a lot of people need certain documents, and something we found as well is that something that people hate doing is contacting HMRC and liaising with HMRC.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys have ever tried calling HMRC, but there's always at least a half an hour wait. And then depending on who you talk to, you get slightly different responses. It's just something that people don't want to deal with. So that's something we think fits really well into a monthly subscription. So if you need to contact HMRC for something, as an example, like some people get a refund and it takes HMRC three months for them to pay out that refund because they got to do their anti-money laundering checks and a couple of other things that just take a lot of time. But the fastest way to then get that refund is just chasing up HMRC a lot, which takes a lot of time. And then in terms of the other products, it's more really for people that just want to do a tax return and then we'll see them next year. And it makes a lot more sense for those people to pay for that service that they get and then pay again when they need to pay for that again in the next year.
Interesting. And Enzo, when you trying to capture the first 100 and 1,000 customers, who was your ideal customer? Was it like the Uber driver, or was it like an Etsy e-commerce owner? How did you get to decide, who's the right audience you want to go ahead for?
Yeah, it's a good question. The thing that we really focused on early on were this kind of category that we call side hustlers.
Okay.
So people that are employed as well as self-employed. The main reason for that was in the UK, if you're just employed, you don't need to do a tax return. So you don't need to worry about it. As soon as you start earning self-employed earnings, it gets quite complicated because you don't just have to report on your self-employed earnings, but you also have to report on your employment income, even though HMRC already knows most of that because they get sent that by your employer. So it's that group of people that we saw were probably most nervous about the tax returns. We're looking for a lot of support, and we saw that was a group of people that weren't really targeted by anybody yet. So we started with them, and kind of a subcategory within that were creatives. So we actually saw that a lot of Uber drivers and Deliveroo riders are quite nifty financially. They still know quite a lot about what they should and should not be doing. Where we saw actually where creatives whose I guess like thinking patterns are just not made sometimes for accounting rules and just need a lot of support doing it for them. We saw most success with that group.
Super interesting. And Earnr has been invested by 7% Ventures along with Antler and FJ Labs. We had Tavis Kenda, who came on the podcast at episode number 138. We'll put that in the show notes. And you're also part of London Business School Incubator Startup Cohort. So how did you get to convince some really high quality investors? I'm a big fan of Fabris and FJ Labs to come and participate in these rounds. What are some of the advice would you want to give to listeners who are looking to raise funding for the venture?
I think what is important in any fundraise is the story always. So why does it make sense what we're doing, and is there really going to be this big change that's happening in the next 10 years? We're definitely not the first startup that is trying to do what we're doing. We definitely won't be the last. But kind of this, I think what really resonated with a lot of our investors was that the accounting industry is something that is based on rules, and any system that is based on rules can be automated. The main reason why it's not automated as much is the way we see it is that one, no company has really tried to do it. And the other is that there is this inherent value that people get from having a relationship with their accountant. This thing that's kind of built on trust, really. And that's probably been true for a very long time. But now, again, with millennials and Gen Z, we kind of see it in banking where you don't really have your banker at the local branch that you know, and they know you and they help you with all your finances. Like that's now all done by chat.
True.
If that can be done with a relationship like banking, why can that not be done with a relationship like accounting? And as long as you kind of are able to do better than an accountant, and still have some of that relationship and that trust, like that's really important, building that trust, then you can really kind of flip over like a whole industry, an industry that has not seen a lot of innovation in a very, very long time. Because most things are still done by people in the accounting industry. Like a lot of people are accountants in the UK.
Right.
So I think one part is that story, and the second part is just having a kick-ass team to do that with. So me and my co-founder Anil, we have a lot of experience building startups. So Anil has been a software engineer for the last 17 years, used to work at places like NVIDIA and Philips, but also been head of engineering across 3 different startups. So I think we kind of give a little bit of showing that expertise that we know what we're talking about. We've worked in the industry. I've again previously worked at Metal, so I've had some experience like working with self-employed individuals, working in a highly regulated environment, which is banking. And around us, surround ourselves with some really great early employees, and I think that's what's convinced them. Because, like I said, there are loads of other startups are trying to do something similar, all slightly different. It's just, why are you the one that's going to make it? And I think often that goes to the story, how you're thinking about it, and the team.
Interesting. You talked about having great team and great early employees. How do you approach hiring, especially for such a small startup? How was the interviewing process for hiring high quality talent who could join you?
Yeah, I think that's something that really sets us apart. I don't know how other startups do it, but it works really well for us. Is hire really fast. So we normally try to give out an offer within like a couple of weeks. Ideally, if we can do it within a week, even better. And just have quite short interviews and try and assess it from there. Like I think it's like hiring is really difficult, and I think that I saw a stat somewhere that interviewing is often seen as the worst kind of way to pick the right candidates, because you have so many like biases that flow into the interview process. So we kind of try and put some filtering on it at the beginning, at the CV stage. Then it's all about, can they communicate well? Do they have that drive? And do they have some level of expertise? Are they a good culture fit? And then try and hire them as soon as possible, get them started, because that will learn the most in the first month that we can ever learn in any amount of interviews. So I at the beginning, we mainly hired people we already knew. So the co-founders had worked with in the past, because we basically shortcutted that whole like what happens after you after you hire them. But now we're getting to a stage where we've run out of people to hire that we already know. And what's worked really well for us is hire really fast. And also if it doesn't work out, like people go.
Yeah, people go. Interesting. And you've been the CEO for close to around 2 years. How would you define your style of leadership, and how's it changed over time since you started on
it? It's a good question. So my background in startups has been as a chief of staff. So I was kind of a jack of all trades, and I think I did a lot of like doing, really. So, and I think that's translated into my style as a CEO. I like to lead from the back, as I always like to say. So kind of getting a lot of stuff done, doing the work alongside everybody, and kind of pushing people forwards in that regard, being very meticulous about the quality of work and getting things done. I think what I've learned though in the last 2 years is that works really well early in the beginning, but as your startup grows, you have to be a lot more, I think, out there in terms of the vision, making sure that you're reminding people almost every single day why we're here, not taking that for granted, communicating that over and over again, and making sure that people stay passionate about what you're doing. Because working in a startup is really hard.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
it's it's definitely not easy. I think people just sometimes underestimate how hard it really is. And staying motivated is, I think, a key thing that you need to keep on staying on top of. And I think, as well as what I see more and more important in my day to day.
Interesting, and especially you're responsible for marketing, business development, product. But how do you approach product reviews, and how do you set the agenda with the engineering team on what comes first and what is urgent versus important?
Yeah, it's a good question, because we've tried a couple of different things. The thing that we're now working on is OKRs, so
Mm,
objectives and key results. Question is, like, are we maybe doing it slightly too early because we're still quite a small team? Definitely are working towards product market fit still, but have seen some amazing first results. So trying to flex the OKRs to be really focused on what we're doing each quarter. We still have a weekly business review as well.
okay.
So kind of a WBR. I've kind of used it in multiple other businesses, and I found it's very successful in terms of getting people to feel responsible, accountable for the metrics, and getting focused on the things that really matter rather than those kind of things that don't really have an impact on the key metrics that you're trying to solve. So making sure we have a really strong focus on that. I think it's a combination of those two. So the WBR gives us the focus on week to week metrics and making sure we're always driving our North Star metric forward. And the OKRs kind of give us an angle where we focus on the key thing we're trying to move this quarter. And that can be a little bit more specific than our North Star metric and the metrics we cover in WBR.
Interesting. And you've been in the strategy, or as a chief of staff role at Metal, Bow, and Loot. What's been some of your biggest lessons when it comes to leaders who are trying to get most out of their product teams and the strategy team, and how do they communicate in order to ensure that the vision and mission is aligned?
Let me think. I think what's really important in terms of good ways of working with a diverse team is making sure everybody is involved in each part of building the product. So engineering is just as much responsible for building the right product as, let's say, product manager. And building in that understanding is key. So I think it's something that's really true in a tax product. The way that we built the product is really dependent on knowing the tax rules and understanding how a customer would kind of use Earnr day to day. Not knowing that can lead to a lot of kind of mistakes in how we build certain things, and can lead to kind of longer times to get new features done.
Right.
So making sure that everybody really understand the different tax processes, understand the different rules, I think speeds things up. And best way to really learn that is do lots of customer interviews, try and understand why they're struggling, and making sure that the whole team is involved in that. So engineering, as well as product manager, as well as marketing, everybody should really know and understand the challenges that our customers are facing, and understand what the most important things is that we're solving. To bring that back to like the second part of your question is how does that kind of fit with things that I've learned at Bow and Metal, and the likes of Loot. I think it's again key to make sure that you talk about that every single day. People forget very often, because when you're in the day-to-day, right, you are so focused on very specific problems, a very specific thing that isn't working, as an example in the app, and getting a reminder of like, yeah, but what does it really matter? Is these are the things that we're doing for our customers. Is that little problem that you're focusing on for the last like 2 weeks, is that moving the needle on that? Because that's what we're doing here. And having a constant reminder and finding creative ways of how to remind people and creative ways that it still keeps them being interesting is, yeah, something that I think is quite important if you want to succeed.
Got it. And do you advise the founders on when should they give up on a new product versus when to keep iterating and persisting on a product feature?
My personal view is that there's probably an amazing product in anything that you build. You just have to pivot enough times to find it. And you need to have enough time to make all those pivots to get to the thing that actually works. So I don't think you should ever give up on what you're doing. Just learn from each iteration, learn what's working, what's not working. And that's really hard. Like really understanding what parts of the product your customers like and don't like, and then focusing more on the things that your customers like. I really like I think there's a Medium article that's flying around from the guys at Superhuman that did their product market fit survey every week and only focus on those people that were loving the products and liked using it, and just focus on them, understand why they love the product so much, and see if you can get the people that aren't getting to that stage to the same spot.
Interesting. We had Vivek Sudera from Superhuman who came on the podcast at
Nice.
episode number 180. We'll put that in the show notes. Was like a product strategy lesson for me. But yeah, no, happy to dive into the top 3. What's your favorite business book?
Shoe Dog. It's about Nike. I thought Phil Knight's great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that book. I'll put that in the show notes. And if you could go back in time when you started Earnr, what is the one thing you were focused on or done anything differently?
I think something I maybe would have focused on earlier was UX research. So we obviously done a lot of research, but you kind of move on quite quickly. I would have made sure that was a constant thing that we kept on doing every week.
Oh, interesting. And do you have any favorite online tools, example, Gmail, Slack, Zoom?
I'm a really big fan of Figma, especially now that they introduced FigJam, which is kind of like Miro, kind of everything I need now.
Interesting. We'll put that in the show notes. And what are the best way people can reach out to you and know more about Earnr?
If they want to know more about Earnr or try the app, you can find us at www.earnr.co.uk. If they want to reach me, the best way is just go on my LinkedIn, send me a message. I respond best if the message is around a very specific question. If it's something vague, then it might take a little while.
Got it, makes sense. We'll put that in the show notes. And so thank you so much for taking the time and speaking to us. I really enjoyed my conversation with you.
All right, thank you very much, Rohit.